Mascot horror isn't going anywhere. Ever since Five Nights at Freddy's dropped, more and more games have been coming out featuring mascots gone evil. Every developer is racing to secure their spot in the genre. From instant hits like Bendy and the Ink Machine to the incredibly embarrassing Hello Neighbor and the controversial Poppy's Playtime. And while all of those franchises have all of their own problems, video for another time, no game had such immediate backlash like Garten of BanBan. Immediately when the game dropped, it was met with hundreds of tweets and videos criticizing the game. Matter of fact, it's so bad that it drove the developers to leave Twitter. But it begs the question, does Garten of BanBan deserve the hate? Has the mascot horror community developed a case of gatekeeping? Will Ophelia Bird finally bird up? Normally, I wouldn't bother myself with a video like this. The games themselves aren't uniquely special, just another okay addition to indie horror. But something truly toxic developed around it in a way that I haven't seen. Rather than simply letting a mediocre game fade into the ether, Garten started getting incredible amounts of hate, being labeled as a quick cash grab, something after playing the game and researching it, I have a hard time believing. And now as I write this, the Euphoric Bros have completely left Twitter, citing DTs towards them and their family as the reason. I hope you can put together what DT stands for because I kinda like to not be flagged. Today, I want to find out, were we too hard on the Euphoric Brothers? Or did the Euphoric Brothers get caught in a quick cash grab? In order to find out, we need to look at the games, the reception, and their backlog. So let's start with a quick review of Garten 1 and 2. Garten of BanBan 1 and 2 are short horror games that take place at a kindergarten. Just like other mascot horrors, BanBan's kindergarten seems innocent until, surprise, mascots go rogue. We've done this before. Garten 1 didn't give us much to work with story-wise, like a few bits of lore for us to chew. It was hard to tell exactly what we were working with. Garten 2 does give us a bit more info, and it seems like our mascots are living creatures after all. Experiments. Oh, sorry, this is footage of Poppy Playtime. Joking aside, Garten made a fatal mistake of following Poppy Playtime's story a bit too much, no matter if they intended to or not. Which sucks considering Garten 2 leaned further into what they were being criticized with the first game. They leaned so far in that they managed to dip into the back rooms. This is easily one of the biggest criticisms of the game, and one that I strongly agree with. Whether or not it's coincidental, nothing feels quite original. It all seems like ideas from other games we've all seen before. There's far too many times that you find yourself saying, this feels like insert an IP here. Gameplay doesn't help their case either. The drone functions nearly identical to the grab pack from Poppy Playtime, but worse. It's sluggish, unresponsive, and just not very well utilized except for certain moments of the game, like this X marks the spot moment. Not entirely great, but a good use of the drone. But for every one of these, you have, hey, hit these 3 buttons above a door. Puzzles in both games are there, but that's about it. Puzzles are incredibly simple and feel very forced into the world. Puzzles do not blend into the environment and really feel like they're prototypes for puzzles that would be implemented eventually. A perfect example is this desk puzzle. The solution is very forcefully shown on the wall. Then in order to solve it, you need to use these switches on the desk. Switches that have only been used for colored key cards. So I spent most of the time looking for key cards that didn't exist. But I'm also now realizing that all of these had a pink light on them, so maybe I'm the idiot. It really feels as though they had the basics filled in and were going to change the assets out eventually to make this work, and then forgot to do that. Garten really does feel like incomplete work. Hastily put together mechanics and puzzles that just barely work. But I have been very harsh so far, and there is some good in here. In this entire mess, there are some incredibly solid ideas. Ideas that just needed more time in the oven. Like this hallway in Garten 2. This is what Garten is supposed to be. Just a moment of showing what a liminal kindergarten should look like. I love this hallway to an unnecessary degree. I'm sorry, brief moment. I love this hallway. This is liminal as hell. There is a good game in this current mess. The drone mechanic with some tweaks could be great. If you can capture that feeling you get from the hall in every room, you're good. This guy, this big ass guy, is actually creepy. It seems to serve no real purpose, but still, I think it's hard to deny there's potential here. And yet, with every clever trick with colored light to hide a blood trail, there's a random 1800s cannon in a hallway. Because how else would you know to launch a firework? Jerica, put 100 question marks on the screen, because why? It's just frustrating because there's so much potential and it really just needs a little tender love and care. I'm sorry. Like, I knew that was gonna happen, but that was bad. But it certainly seems that current discourse online may have killed that chance. So now that we've broken down the game, we need to talk about the reception. As we showed in the review, Garten, in its current state, is problematic to say the least. Things feel lifted straight from other games, and it's just unpolished. But if you look at the online community's reception, you think this game mugged you in an alley to get your wallet, went home, and then kicked your dog. It's one thing to just be a mediocre game. It's way worse when that first game committed the sin of a merch link on the main menu. Okay, maybe not a major sin. I had a chat with the Game Salmon and he pointed out that the baby in yellow added a link to merch in an update, yet we as a community didn't have a problem with that. In the end, he and I agreed that you should wait to be an established franchise. I mean, you put a lot of work into your game, you should be able to make the bag. There are exceptions, of course, but to avoid feeling like a cash grab, waiting a bit to put merch on the main menu can score some good PR. Garten, however, didn't do this. Instead, they added merch for what was ultimately a 5-minute game. What it looks like from an audience perspective is that the brothers saw Poppy Playtime and said, yeah, let's emulate that. Which, Poppy Playtime? Really? Look, I think the game plays incredibly well, but did you see the enormous backlash to the game? It's a bold strategy. It's also definitely the worst optic. I think the less severe take is that they saw mascot horror blowing up and they decided to jump in. Then they ended up mixing too many ideas from other franchises. Not only that, they have picked up a few bad developing practices as well, i.e. the merch button. It really should have stopped here. A mediocre game with some potential, but ultimately it was nothing to write home about. But that's not where it went. Now, I'm going to be a bit careful here because ultimately this channel is just about talking video games. But in this video, I have to dive a bit into the commentary community because you can't talk about Garten without talking about the YouTubers surrounding this online discourse.
Garten of BanBan is the game your non-tech savvy parents get you for your birthday when you asked for security breach.
Garten of BanBan is just some really short, half-baked Poppy Playtime ripoff.
We had to pay for this arguably worse experience.
Identity Crisis the game.
Sucks. Just go.
I paid money for this!
Sure, what I showed was a lot of clips out of context, so let's dive deeper into what's being said. I'm going to start this section by immediately saying, 1, the creators didn't call for or justify the DTs. 2, please do not harass anyone we talk about. Not that I think you would. If anything, I'm absolutely terrified to look at the comment section down below. Though this might be futile, let's be civil here. Now, let's talk about the absolute mess that is, well, quite frankly, a freaking cluster. Well, I mean, YouTube let up on the cursing, so it's a cluster. Trying to find an exact timeline of events is hard, but frankly, the timeline is not too important here. It really all comes down to execution. Where this dive started for me was with YouTuber Yaz video titled Garten of BanBan Tricked the Internet. This video is a roller coaster, seeing how Yeah went from just writing the game off to becoming Garten's biggest memester. In the video, a lot of the criticism about the game is not unlike what we covered here.
And you don't need me to spend 5 minutes talking about why the drone mechanic is terrible and complete missed potential, or why the idea of the location being a kindergarten is completely wasted in favor of a stock Unity building with random pre-made assets thrown everywhere in an attempt to give this game some sort of visual identity. The only thing it can truly call its own are the monster models, which are very poorly made and all have this gross vein texture on them. Jumbo Josh has a fucking vein texture in his mouth?
Pretty much everyone across the board had this exact criticism.
The drone you get honestly is it the worst? It's just so basic and boring.
They totally got this off Sketchfab. They just straight up bought this and dropped it in like we wouldn't notice.
The level and puzzle design is usually pretty bland and not that interesting.
Garten of BanBan needs to make a decision on what it's trying to be. Is it a parody of mascot horror or an addition to it?
There's no doubt that the flaws of the game have been said and hammered home. Honestly, if I were to get that feedback consistently on a project, it's something I would address. That is, if every title wasn't also labeled like Garten of BanBan tricked the internet, Garten of BanBan 2 made me miserable, Garten of BanBan 2 was a nightmare, Garten of BanBan the worst of the mascot horror games, the creator of BanBan are babies, Refund Percent Speedrun Part 1, Garten of BanBan is a joke, Garten of BanBan is easily the worst indie horror game ever. Demuted. A lot of this is clearly built for algorithm purposes. Fun fact, extreme titles are how we get clicks as creators. We live in a content creation dystopia and I hate it. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't put too much stock into titles being incredibly hateful or mean-spirited. Instead, I'll just point to the actual contents of these videos.
These puzzles, if you could even call them that, were thrown into this game for no other purpose than the Euphoric Brothers ran out of ideas and needed to pad the game out just a little longer so people couldn't refund it.
This game was made for attention, and it was made for that sole purpose alone. You cannot tell me passion was put into any of this.
Did you not have fun?
I
Did you
hated
enjoy
it.
that?
It's horrible.
It's very blatantly like just something to be a cash grab.
Boots!
Boots! I know a lot of that may seem out of context, and definitely is, but herein lies the first major problem with this whole situation. Despite the incredibly valid and deserved criticism from everyone, everything is just incredibly harsh. The phrase, "sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me," is the literal dumbest thing I remember from my childhood. In this particular case, I think a lot of valid criticism was immediately ignored by how hateful the points may have seemed to the Euphoric Brothers. The thing is, just as the Euphoric Brothers are seen copying and trying to make a quick buck, the indie horror game community appears toxic and horrible, which I don't think is necessarily... who am I kidding? Toxicity is most definitely there. The mistake made, though, is assuming all of these creators are toxic haters, for lack of a better term. So let me flip the script here and talk about the Euphoric Brothers' response in all this, because to view the brothers as poor victims of an unwelcoming community ain't it either. Case in point, after all that was said in the first video, Yes video ended like this.
I guess all I can say is I hope the next game is better. And I also hope my Opila bird hat comes in the mail real soon, because yes, I ordered one, and no, I don't regret it.
Now, I haven't talked to specifically about this, which, if you're down to talk this and content creation, hit me up. Though I don't have him saying this, I do truly think he had hoped that the brothers would turn around a solid second game. The guy even bought an Ophelia bird hat. Bird up. And even leading up to the second game's release, was making what ended up being a futile attempt at memeing with them. While trying to find the Twitter back and forth is nearly impossible because the brothers blocked there is one example that shows a missed opportunity. Perhaps one of the last things tweeted at them before being blocked was a response to their announcement of making the game mobile, which they pulled off super fast. Not the point. Then responded with a picture of a Leapfrog Explorer with Garten installed. From the brothers' perspective, I can see why this was the last straw. It's their game that they take seriously on a toy meant for children. I get it. But this was also the golden opportunity to meme back, turning a toxic relationship to something that benefits both and the Euphoric Brothers. But it was evident at this point that the Euphoric Bros wanted to be the bad guy, and so gets blocked. That was that. The thing is, I don't think any of the criticism really landed with the brothers. Whether it was an ego thing or the harsh criticism they received from Garten 1, Garten 2 really didn't improve on a lot of the criticism given. Looking at their Twitter, one post really stands out. It's the first time meme featuring Garten, Poppy, and Rainbow Friends characters. The post being captioned, "When a new indie horror game with a main menu gets released." I had to look at this so many times because it's a big bit mind-boggling. It's really a prime example of the brothers not getting the criticism. The weird overlap on the menu combined with promoting their next game and the merch button, that's what was being talked about. It just feels very pompous in a very weird way. The main point I'm trying to get across here is that it really feels as if each side was made out to be the extreme. The harsh words of the creators made the brothers out to be these money-hungry hacks, while the brothers made the creators out to be evil incels wanting to be angry at anything. And yes, I acknowledge that I'm using harsh language right now, but from an outside observer, that's what it felt like. Here's the thing though, I can 100% understand the creator side of things. Exaggerated titles and strong opinions do well on the platform. Who I needed to understand was the brothers. I needed to know what they were about, how they think. Understand them as developers to really figure out if they're still learning or is there a pattern of poor game design. So I played their older games. Going through the backlog of the Euphoric Brothers games is certainly a trip. First thing I did when we finished Garten 1 was buying their game Egghead Gumpty, the game before Garten. The game was frustrating to say the least. Who's watching me?
It always feels like... Oh god.
Wow.
Damn. What the hell was that one?
Wait, what was that? Screw this. Out of here. There you go. The content might change, but the damn death montage lives on. You're welcome. The game is a hot mess. The random rooms and objects made finding the enemies nearly impossible. It's rough. Like Garten, it does feel like a hastily thrown together game with little play testing. If they did play test this, Euphoric Brothers, you need better testers because the lockpick mechanic is terrible. But there was one thing that struck me as problematic. It's the exact premise of Flumpties, a character and friends that turn into nightmare fuel. So tossing that on the increasingly large stack of bad optics. I'm not sure if it was intentional, but it's incredibly similar in ways. So I decided we needed to go deeper. I wanted to know their roots. I wanted to find what made them tick. What I found was not what I expected. You see, Gumpty and Garten were their first dives into 3D horror gameplay. Before these games, they made 2D horror-esque adventure games. Think games like Home, but like this.
Nice meeting you, fam. We'll conversate more later.
That's where I learned a lot. Specifically, I learned that some of their promotion patterns have been around for a while. When I opened their remaster of their first game, Swallow the Blue, I was greeted with an ad for Gumpty. It's subtle, in that it's a constantly looping video with flashing lights in the corner. So advertising their next games is nothing new. But the thing is, this is a free game pointing to a paid game. Anyway, let's get past the main menu. I started the game, and if you didn't like the level design of Garten, let me introduce you to the mess that is Swallow the Blue. Browns and grays, which I get, they're trying to show it being a terrible hotel, but it feels like a blob of drab and void of any character. When I think back at games like Outlast, or a better example, BioShock, rundown locations are layered. We still see what the original intent was in the design of the location. It's the wear and tear of bad upkeep that is detailed on top of everything. Here, it's like the hotel owner picked cracked, grimy gray pavement for a wall. Admittedly, I didn't get far into the game. It really didn't hook me, and most of the intro is walk to here and then walk to this other thing. I decided this wasn't a good place to start to get an idea of what they were supposed to be. So I jumped to the last 2D adventure they did, Human Apocalypse. Strange, there are two versions, a prologue for free and a $10 full game. I think I'll just choose the free game, and man, am I glad I did. First off, Human Apocalypse has fantastic branding. Matter of fact, nearly every game they have on Steam has some really solid logo work. Well, mostly. Gumpty is just a font. So kudos to whoever's doing their branding, you get a gold star. But what really struck me about this game was how neat the premise was. A zombie outbreak is on the rise, but is quickly stopped short when a cure is quickly implemented. Now humanity is rebuilding, but those that were infected still have green skin. I think you can see where this is going. For the sake of not upsetting Papa YouTube, let's just say people don't like people that have green skin. Honestly, I think it's a neat premise to work with. I mean, dangerous if you don't do the story right, which I wouldn't know because I didn't get too far into it either. Because again, back and forth, mediocre dialogue and this weirdly chipper yet terrible doctor.
How are you doing today? Actually, never mind. frankly, I don't care that much.
Yeah, the voice acting just doesn't match the tone of this game. Same with the dialogue. Don't think I've met someone who called it individual fam all the time. And if it wasn't clear by the gameplay, we have even more ugly textures. Again, I know you want things to feel dirty, but we're missing the character in it. With another game absolutely confusing me and $10 saved, I decided to take a look at the release dates. Let's say they've been busy. Between January 2021 and January 2023, they released 10 games. That's more than Scott Cawthon, fun fact. Some with planned sequels that never happened too, which leads me to believe they started development on other projects that were abandoned. With a production schedule like this, it's no wonder that Garten of BanBan came out to be a 5-minute game and yet still somehow feels rushed. But there is something more that I pulled from this. Unlike some of their other games, Garten did feature some developer vlogs. These were key to piecing this all together. I had the pattern, but I didn't have the thought process. In their developer vlog, I got a much better sense of what they were going for in Garten. Here's what they had to say about the character design and, more importantly, the level design.
We knew two things about the monsters we wanted to design. One, that they needed to be very fitting in a kindergarten setting, and two, that they needed to look creepy as 3D monsters. We decided to go with a style that mimicked those murals and drawings you can expect to see drawn all over the walls of a kindergarten. The idea was to have a setting that most people would be able to relate to and then put our own twist on it. We've had this idea for a while now, and a correct implementation is what we needed. Most people have been to kindergarten, and therefore most people would feel uncanny in a twisted kindergarten. It's a mix of unsettling and liminal.
This puts so much into context. It explains why the characters seem so messy and poorly designed, and why the kindergarten feels more like an asylum. They understand the how, but not the why. It's something I see in a lot of new editors. They're able to cut around and move graphics, but they don't know why they're specifically doing it. Look, editing is 90% of my life. Just give me this. They know what liminal is. They've seen it with other media, but they don't know why it feels liminal. It was most obvious to me when you see this area that looks straight ripped from the back rooms, and then you see this excellent hallway. I just love this hallway. It's the one piece of Garten that feels Garten. That's why I don't think they're incapable of making a great game. I just don't think they spend the time to hit all the correct beats. With all that in mind, I think I can finally answer our question. So, were we too hard on the Euphoric Brothers? Yes. Oh, how'd that giant asterisk get there? When you break down the entire situation, from harsh criticism to the DTs, it's no wonder why they shut everybody out. We missed out on a big teachable moment. I think back on the Scott Cawthon situation when his donations were leaked. What could have been a great teachable moment ended up with the creator of FNAF leaving the franchise. But I mean, he's working on the movie, so I doubt he ever left. But the brothers are just as guilty in this situation. Inside all of those videos, as harsh as they may seem, there was very valid, very needed criticism. And yet it feels like they didn't want to hear it, simply writing off their critics with a meme and calling everyone scummy. Which brings me back to an old professor of mine in college. I think one of the most important things he taught me was just take the note. And I'm not saying to just blindly take all notes from everyone. It's more whether or not you agree with the note, you take it seriously, you acknowledge it, you take it into consideration whether you end up implementing it or not. So Euphoric Brothers, if you're watching, you have the potential to turn Garten of BanBan into a staple of mascot horror, but you're only going to get there if you do listen to the criticism despite how harsh it is. It's tough, I know. I've seen the comment sections of my videos. More importantly though, spend time on the next Garten. Really take your time and work on locking it in. You'll get more hype for the game if you make something excellent rather than just pumping the next one out. And when you get it to a workable place, have others outside of your circle give it a shot. You now have access to a lot more creators and developers that may be willing to help you with making it into something special. Hell, I'll take a look at an early build if you're ready for Dan notes. Jerica knows what I'm talking about. It's all in the interest of making a better game. In the end, that's all we want. A great game that we feel deserves the attention. At this point, all eyes are on you for the third game, so make it count. And no more baby Aphelias. Give us the OG bird that we crave to bird up. Thank you everyone for watching. If you're not already, hit that subscribe button. It really helped pull this dormant channel back out into the open. That we have a 3-part series coming up tackling the entire FNAF franchise, even though FNAF beat me to it. Cybert out.